obviously, like most people, that I could have done more, like I could have been more successful or could have worked harder for certain things. But then that's a very, while it does work as a strong motivator for some people, it's also a very, like, it can cause people to be depressed or just compare themselves to others unnecessarily.
Because there's so many moments where I look back on all the time I've wasted and all the skills I want to learn that I just I'm not putting the real effort into.
If I'm doing something and I know something is dirty, or if I'm I haven't cleaned something yet, I cannot put my mind to peace until I do it, because it's just gonna be in the back of my mind bothering me.
Welcome to Coming In Without Context. I'm Hope Stolzheimer, and I'm joined by Dylan Yang. Today, we'll be talking.
What are we talking about, Hope?
That's a great question. Here we go. So my first question for you is, what is something you've accomplished as an adult or young adult that your younger self would be proud of?
Something I've accomplished. Making it into college.
What did your younger self not think you would make it into college?
I don't think my younger self had many hard set goals in mind for the future, much similar to my present self. Well, this is tough. These types of questions, they always put you on the spot. This is like an interview for a job. I think they'd be impressed that I spent a year studying abroad in England, because they hate traveling.
So they would have been more surprised.
Yeah, they'd be very shocked to hear that.
Though studying abroad in England wasn't so much of a vacation and traveling as it was just living in a new place.
Yeah, but it's still you're uprooting everything around you, which you are familiar with, and you're packing it all up and going across an entire ocean, thousands of miles. And you have to start over with completely new people and a slightly different culture. Well, it's actually it's moderately different culture. It's enough where it's obvious and it affects your daily life and you need to adjust to it,
Yeah. Whenever people talk about studying abroad in that way, for me, there was never any culture shock in Jordan or England. And I don't really view it as an achievement. Studying abroad more as just a fun opportunity where I got to learn new things and stuff. So it's always interesting when people bring up this sort of perspective, because for me, it just felt like living in a different place. And there weren't all these aspects to it added on. And so when people talk about studying abroad as this super adaptable, flexible experience where you're in a totally new environment, I don't know why I can't relate to it.
No, I think what you're saying is true to the day-to-day experience of it. You're obviously not thinking about how drastic a change in lifestyle it is when you're there, because you're there in person and you're kind of engaged in adapting and just doing your own thing. But I think if you take a step back and think about it, then it becomes more impressive, because for our new era of technology and instant messaging, everything seems small, when in reality, the world is very, very big. And when you ride a plane, even if it's a long flight, 6 hours or even longer than that, you're not taking in the fact that you're traveling across half the globe and that there's no way you could ever walk or swim that distance.
I saw a statistic the other day. There's still 18% of Americans have never flown on a plane in their whole lives. So like 1/5 of people have never done it.
Really? Well, a lot of the US is inland and very rural. So, like, if you think about it, there's no need to ever travel or fly on a plane. It's more of a luxury or recreational activity.
And oh, this is actually what I was looking for. I just Googled this. I thought I saw that 80% of people have never flown. And then, of course, all the statistics that popped up immediately online were Americans. It is true that 80% of the world has never taken a flight, which is what I was looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense because, I mean, in the context of human history, flying is a relatively new technology. And before that, no one ever needed to fly. Like, obviously, it'd take longer to get certain places, but you could get there eventually. So it was never a necessity. And everything, especially today, everything you could ever want is provided for you within however many miles, depending on where you live. Like within a city, you could have everything you need within a few blocks. Or if you're in an outskirt town, you're still going to have a local market or shop to have groceries, and there's going to be services for utilities and everything else. So everything is modular to these communities now, and that's always been the case. That's since the beginning of civilization, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess taking a flight is something that I didn't take a flight for the first time until I was in middle school, and I was one of the later people that I knew to not have taken a flight, because I remember we used to have to do those activities on sheets where it's go around the class and find someone who's done this or who's done that, and you'd write a name in a box, and you could only repeat a name 2 times. So it forced you to go talk to everybody and ask what they'd done. And they would be like, oh, have you taken a plane? That's the only one I have left to fill out. I used all the other ones. And I'll be like, no, sorry. So I guess it's just one of those things that eventually you have to put it into perspective. How many people have never done things you've done, I guess. Just as simple as taking a plane.
Well, I also think that how we view the act of flying is different because obviously for our upbringing and where we live, it seems very common to just be like, oh, you went on vacation, where did you go? Around the world. And you flew there, right? But I feel like for a good portion of people, it's not even something that you'd think of that you haven't done. For example, if for someone who lives further south where there is no snow, it wouldn't cross their mind to be like, oh, have you ever been snowboarding or skiing before? Because they don't have access to that. So similarly, if you don't live close to an airport or you have no need to travel, it's not going to cross your mind on a daily basis to be like, oh, I haven't flown anywhere recently, or I haven't done this thing that I should just try once in my life.
Yeah. And for me, growing up, I was always keenly aware of the fact that there were people around me who were going abroad and taking vacations there. And my family was just going to Jersey. So it was one of those things where I was the outlier, but not really in the grand scheme of things. Anyways, I'm going to ask you the next question. Because we got a little sidetracked. Oh, are there any other accomplishments you'd want to list before I move on?
I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I'll probably think of something later, and I'll be like, damn, I should have said that.
Maybe starting this podcast is one of them.
I feel like it definitely is a cool thing to say. Oh, and like, well, like similarly, whenever I say, "Oh, I know how to beatbox," people are always like, "Wow, that's cool." But having learned it or having started actually done it, it wasn't that difficult to start, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't feel strongly prideful of it.
Yeah.
But you know, you never know. Maybe in a few years, I'll be like, "Wow, that was a thing I did. That's pretty cool."
Here's my next question. Have you become what you'd wanted to become by this point in your life?
I think so. Again, I never really had high expectations or low expectations for that matter, of what I'd become. So, I mean, I don't feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm doing all right. And I think part of that is just my outlook on the world. Like I do feel, obviously, like most people, that I could have done more, you know, like I could have been more successful or could have worked harder for certain things. But then that's a very, while it does work as a strong motivator for some people, it's also a very, like, it can cause people to be depressed or just compare themselves to others unnecessarily. So like, if I ever take a step back and think about it, my personal worldview is that you shouldn't chase after those things recklessly. You know, life is kind of short, and a lot of people do a lot of different things, and you don't have to do everything. So you should just be happy and grateful for what you have, right? So I'm pretty satisfied with where I am, and I enjoy life, and I do my own thing. You know, obviously not everything's going to work out, but as long as things aren't going too terribly, I am content.
I think you've reached a higher degree of self-actualization than I have.
Well, then what do you think about yourself, Hope?
Whoa.
I'm flipping the question back to you.
So, like, you were just saying, like, people look back and are like, oh, there's so many times I could have worked harder for this or, like, done that. And for me, I look back and I think those things. And then it just makes me depressed. So I'm the person you are describing. Because there's so many moments where I look back on all the time I've wasted and all the skills I want to learn that I just, like, I'm not putting the real effort into. And it's just, like, sad.
I think the difference between people who use it as a motivation and people who are kind of just upset by it is that you need to actually do something in response to it, right? Like,
yeah, I'm
it's
well
just
aware.
it's completely natural to think about what you could have done, like, and have regrets, and then just feel sorry about it. Like, that's a natural human response. But then I feel like the people who are successful and who are hard workers kind of take that and use it to be like, okay, this is how I can do my next steps. This is how I can improve. This is how I can be better. And then that's what makes hardworking, successful stories. But then at the same time, it could be just a myth, you know, that we've grown up with. Like, I feel like that's definitely not the majority of people. I feel like the majority of people are more similar to you, where you look at your regrets and you go, damn, that sucks. I wish I could have done it differently, but, like, I can't do anything about it now. So, you know, I'll just feel a little sad for a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not for a lack of planning. It's a lack of acting on planning. My next question is, what tasks make you feel like your best self?
What tasks? I think performing when I'm singing, beatboxing, or playing saxophone, performing to an audience is very fun, and also like it feels like I'm accomplishing something in the moment. Like I never get nervous nowadays because I've done it so often, but it's like you're providing entertainment and joy to other people, and there's value in that, and you didn't have to, it didn't cost you that much. Like I don't buy a new saxophone every time, right? I can just use my saxophone that I have, and I can learn music that I already is in my ability, and like I've practiced, and I can perform it. And then more and more people can just take new value from that, like I'm not losing anything to produce it. And like similarly, like when I create videos, there's the production of the video, at least where I am right now, doesn't cost any money, right? Like we do this podcast on zero budget because it's just for fun, and we can record it for free, and then all I need to put in is a little time, and I enjoy it enough to do that. And then you can put it out there, and hopefully someone listening can use this as background noise, or just think about what we're talking about, and that there's value in that. So I think those are the types of things, like inspiring emotion in other people or inspiring thought, make me feel good about what I'm doing.
Does your enjoyment of performing extend beyond the stage? Because I know you're a bit goofy, and sometimes I feel like you put on a performance for people who are around you. And does that similarly like make you feel like your best self, or is it just like when you're beatboxing or playing saxophone? Or
I definitely try to do my best to kind of like perform when I'm with people, so to speak. Like not that I'm being disingenuous to myself, but just that I like it when other people laugh as a result of a joke I tell or something funny I say. But that's kind of different because I feel like that's true for most people. When you're hanging out with friends, you want them to enjoy your company, right? And you want to enjoy their company. Like it's supposed to be a mutual relationship. But then it's not exactly the same, because in the moment, you sort of ironically have less control over yourself, and when you say something, you can't take it back when it's face to face. So I feel like I've had a lot of experiences while like I'm having fun and enjoying time with friends. There are also just as many times where I've said something stupid, or I've said something that hasn't gotten any reaction, or maybe it gets a negative reaction, or like if you tell a joke and it's at the expense of someone else, there's that trade-off. So it's not as controllable compared to almost like a one-way relationship through performing or through making content. Like I have more creative control over what music I play and what audience I play to. Whereas when you're hanging out with friends, it's everyone's putting themselves out there at the same time, and you can't undo if you mess up. Hope, do you have a question to ask Tamor?
Yeah, so we were just discussing this, but what tasks make you feel like your best self?
What tasks make me feel like my best self? That's a good question. Well, honestly, I think, one of the things that I really like doing that kind of just like puts my mind at ease, I guess, is like cleaning and organizing. So like usually like when I'm stressed about something, or I just want to take my mind off something, I just usually find myself cleaning things. It can be like anything, like organizing my table. Like sometimes I just like to sit down and just go through like my folders on my computer and stuff like that, or like cleaning my house. So I usually find that, in a way, cleaning does kind of help me make me feel like I'm on the track to be doing something better. Because, it kind of like sets like that foundation.
Yeah, I agree. I like that because they talk about that thing. I don't know why they said it was like an Air Force thing, but they have you make your bed every morning because like when you start the day off with like accomplishing a task, you can be more productive throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, that's actually so true. Because like usually when people are talking about their goals in life or like long-term goals, everyone's always like, start with something you can do like small, something that you can finish on a day-to-day basis. And I guess like making your bed is kind of part of a daily routine, but it is like a small task that you can accomplish that, gives you the feeling that you've done something, especially long term when you're working on something long term and you just don't have like that instant gratification because you're obviously it's not going to happen in a day.
Yeah.
Small stuff like that, kind of help works towards that way.
I can't necessarily relate. I don't ever make my bed. I'm so messy and yeah.
I actually find that really interesting because I find it interesting that there are some people that actually just really thrive in like messy environments, which is like totally fine. It's like, yeah, everyone's like different in that sense, right? You usually find people who are very neat or organized, and like I feel like for me, example, I can't like if I'm doing something and I know like something is dirty, or like if I'm like I haven't cleaned something yet, like I cannot put my mind to peace like until I do it because it's just gonna be in the back of my mind bothering me. Like for example, like if I'm like cleaning my desk, but like it's been a while and I'm like I need to do this, I can't do anything else until I've done it. But then there's just some people who are like, whatever, screw that. Like I'll just do it later, or they just work well in that kind of environment, which is kind of cool.
It's the procrastination deep in the bones.
True.
I feel like I'm in between what you two are describing because sometimes I'll have like tasks that once it gets in my head, I can't not do it, like you're saying, Tamor.
Mm-hmm.
But then I feel like for me, the being messy is a different thing. Like I prefer being clean and organized, right? But
Yeah,
it's
same.
not that I can't work in a messy environment. It's more like when I have a clean, organized environment, I feel better because I know I can work and spread out my stuff so that it's messy again. Like I have the space.
It's like that
to
mental
really
like
do
headset
stuff.
too,
Yeah. Well, but and then like I guess an example of this would be like cooking, right? If there's a mess on the counter, I feel really uncomfortable putting like a cutting board on over like, food that's fallen or like a spill, like I need to wipe up the spill first and then I have a
I
clean space.
see.
Now
So
I
you can like
put,
move on to the next step.
yeah, exactly. Like that.
Wait, that's interesting. Yeah, like for me, like if we're talking about cooking here, like I like some people can just like whip together something. Or if I'm like using a recipe, like I always am triple checking everything. Like, did I preheat the oven? Like making sure all the ingredients are out on the table and like having all like the measuring cups and stuff ready. So it's like some people just kind of like, go through the process while they're doing it. But I don't know. I kind of just find myself, making sure I have everything ready before I do it.
I feel like I'm a mix when it comes to cooking. I won't put a tray like on a spill. And I'll probably clean up a spill specifically, but if there's like flour, maybe I'll leave it for a bit. And like normally I reread recipes and I recheck things several times, but I still like I'll go through it step by step and do things step by step rather than like preparing everything in advance. So I feel like it's a mix.
I think I need to do it step by step, like prep everything beforehand because it's just so much. It makes it so much easier. But sometimes I wish I could be like a professional chef and multitask. Like they do everything at once, and they're like it all the timing works out so that it all comes together and it saves the most time. Like that's what I really appreciate about it is that I don't need to spend as much time just devoting myself to doing one thing at a time. But then that also could just be like media portrayal bias where like all the cooking shows have made like they're cut so it looks like it's really fast, but in actuality it takes a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think well in terms of that, it's like when your job is cooking, you kind of just like pick up on a lot of things, and a lot of it's just like kind of muscle memory too. I feel like it's like over time or over the years, like you make something and you've kind of already gotten used to the process of how to make most things. So you kind of just get into like the flow where you're not really thinking about it. But like, at least for me, if I'm like cooking something new, obviously like that's gonna take time to like really like stop and think about what you're doing because you've never done it before, right? So
Yeah.
it's like that time process. You need to like make sure you're stopping, like you're reading the recipe, you're making sure everything's coming out correctly. Versus like if you're a chef, like you've probably done similar things thousands of times in the kitchen in like a professional environment. So like it's like dependent on you being like quick and efficient and making sure you're putting everything together. Like if you're making something you've made at home a lot before, you probably don't really need to think about it as much because you've done it before a lot. Like if you're making like an omelet or like a fried egg or something that's like relatively simple and you don't really need to think twice about it, usually that's fine. But then when you're like doing something like baking or a more complex recipe that kind of requires that thought because you've done it very few little times, right? So
Yeah.
you need more time to like process all that.
Similar to the task question, like where do you feel most centered and happy? And this can go to either of you.
This is an easy one for me.
All right, let's hear it, Dylan.
All right, so Taylor, I don't know if you know this about me, but
Okay.
I've mentioned this. I hate traveling.
You hate traveling. That's interesting.
I love staying at home and specifically sitting in front of my computer playing.
Oh yeah, yep.
But I don't think
that's something I can relate with.
I don't think it's like that. Doing that makes me happy. It's more like doing that is my security and
Comfort.
Yeah, exactly. Like I know what to expect. There's nothing that can harass me. Well, no, okay, that's not true. There's definitely things that can harass me. There's nothing that can hurt me that like I'm not volunteering into that's going to be like I don't know what the circumstances are, or I don't know what's going to come at me, right? Like if you put yourself out there, and I'm thinking specifically of like when I have to go to family friend dinners, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know my parents' friends that well, and they speak a different language that I'm used to, and I can't communicate back fluently. So then that makes me uncomfortable because I don't know what to expect every time. But whenever I sit down in front of my PC, I know exactly how everything operates, where everything is. I know down to which apps I have downloaded, right? And I know what I have access to, so it's just that like that familiarity that it's really nice to come back to.
Yeah, totally. I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I'm similar in that sense too, where I feel like obviously when you're at home, it's like your comfort place. Oh, for most people, it's like, your comfort place, you know what to expect for the most part. And I also relate to the sense that like, just like hopping on my chair and then opening up my laptop, like I know what to expect. And, there's like, not much that can throw you off of that space really. It's the same routine. Like I open up my computer. Usually the first thing I do is open up my browser, open up Spotify, play some music. Like when I'm on my computer, I'm always listening to music. Like that's something I find like myself kind of getting into. It's like if there's no music, then it just doesn't feel right to me. So I feel like in that sense, listening to music kind of does help me feel centered too, because it's one of the first things that I do when I'm on my computer is like boot up Spotify and then just start playing whatever playlist I'm feeling like.
Yeah. Knowing Hope, her answer is definitely not what we just said though.
What would you say is your centered place, Hope?
I was reflecting on this as you were speaking, because for me it would definitely not be at home.
Okay.
And the only thing I could come up with is the desert in Jordan, which I've only been to like twice. Because like I couldn't think of anything at home or near my home that makes me feel centered or like happy for being there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like when I was in the desert, like it was just so like calming, relaxing, and like it was just a completely different experience. But then at the same time, like as that's somewhere I've only been twice, I don't know if I can really claim that, but that was just like where my head initially went, because I don't know, maybe I just don't feel centered.
I mean, maybe like I guess experiences are kind of like those kind of new experiences away from home, or like where you find your centeredness. Like it doesn't necessarily maybe have to be the desert, but maybe like that's the most. Did you go there recently or?
I went there several months ago. I studied abroad in Jordan, in
Oh,
the
nice.
city, in like the capital city, Amman. And we went to the desert a few times while I was there. But that's not where I was like living.
But it's just like a place you visited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've never really been to a desert before, but like I guess, I mean, usually like when I picture a desert, it's kind of like intense. Like I'm guessing it's probably very hot over in Jordan, right? And it's like I don't know, it is kind of intense. But if that's where where you're leaning towards finding yourself, I think that's pretty nice. Actually, something you said about like not finding like happiness at home, I was kind of reflecting back on what I said, and like honestly, like I said that I don't really feel thrown off, but I guess now that I'm thinking about it, there are like sometimes like I don't know, like when your parents come up to, or like let's say like you're at home, right, and you're just like focused on doing something, or like you're busy, whether it's like working on an assignment or with your friends and whatnot, and then like sometimes your parents just come up to you, and it kind of just like ruins that flow. I find that happening to me a lot actually at home.
Yeah.
So like in that sense, it kind of does bother me sometimes. So I guess like to add on to my original answer, there are times when I kind of don't feel centered at home because of stuff like that.
I agree. I think I also want to adjust my answer. Well, because I think the key there is that it's not, when we say it's our home, it's like our childhood home, right? But we don't own it. Like it's our parents' house, right?
Yeah.
Like they've lived there way longer, and they have literally like ownership of it. So I think probably the ideal would be getting your own place, moving out. And even if it's just an apartment, at least you have somewhere that you can say, oh, this is really mine. And I have privacy here. I have security here. And then I can move my PC into there. And then it's basically the same,
No, that's actually so true. Like I just often find myself thinking just like how exciting it would be to like live on your own, I guess, because then you just develop your own agenda and everything. And like there's like, yeah, when you're by yourself, there's a lot less distractions like that to invade your personal space, I guess. It's like you can just like, do your own thing, and then no one's disturbing you or anything. So in that way you feel like perfectly centered, right? No distractions or anything. It is your own place.
And I think that's probably part of Hope's answer. Like, I feel like it's, even though her answer sounds very drastically different to ours, I think at the root of it, it's the same. Like, you're looking for somewhere calm and serene, like without distraction, without hassle. And for Hope in the desert, there's nothing assaulting you there, because like there's literally nothing around.
Yeah. The desert was amazing. I recommend going to the desert at some point in your life.
I do want to travel more if I can in the future, if it's possible. I would love to travel like different places like that. And since I've never been to I've never considered adding a desert to my traveling hotspots necessarily, but like now that you talked about it, I mean, it does sound like a unique experience for sure.
Yeah.
So sorry, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, we specifically went into like a really remote part in the desert because some Jordanian Bedouins took us on the back of their Jeep truck, so like basically the middle of nowhere, and we slept like not even in tents, like just on mats outside, and we were like able to look at the stars and everything, and it was just like it was never pitch black because like the moon was lighting everything up, and like the only things out there were really like rock formations and like a few other people on like either camels or also trucks, but no one like really around us, and it was just like basically space just everywhere from all directions. I don't know, it's just something very peaceful about it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because like obviously since there's not a lot of people around, then you kind of just like find all that emptiness, but and you find I guess the nature of it. I mean, since we live so close to a city, we're just like surrounded by people at all times, and I feel like getting away from that is kind of nice. you don't get like all that, busyness.
Yeah. And then my next question, and perhaps my final question, but maybe not, is what are you both most grateful for?
Well, honestly, actually, I've been thinking about this question a lot lately in my own life. And I guess the one thing I am like grateful for is just obviously, you know, being like able to live in such a nice area, I guess. I mean, since, I live in a pretty good town, and I've been thinking about like how across the world, like there's just so many people that don't really have the same opportunities or, safety as me. And, sometimes I felt like whenever I find myself like being kind of ungrateful, I guess, like I just like really start thinking about, should I be ungrateful for whatever issue I'm thinking about in life? Because at the end of the day, I have like, the house and safety. I go to school, and that's like a lot of things that many people across the world just don't really have access to. So I guess in that sense, I am grateful that, I have all of that here.
For me, the correct answer is that I'm most grateful for you, Hope.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my God.
But then in addition to that, I will also add something similar to Tamor, that I think just more generally, like I'm not grateful for any one specific thing, but being able to live a life where I don't have to worry about everything that's going on, like Tamor was saying, like some people can't do anything about their situation, and that's really unfortunate. And there's not much that we can do for them. Depending on who you are, you can't necessarily directly help someone else who is suffering a serious issue like war.
I guess what you're trying to say is that immediate change for someone in a situation like that is very difficult. Like you said, if there's a war going on in a country, like no matter what you say, it's not like you can just like waltz over to the country and be like, I hate war, so stop fighting. Like you can't do that, right? But like I get what you're trying to say. Like I think in that sense, that's why like long-term change is like something that we're all aiming for, right? Like what are ways we can give back in the long term that we can help those kind of people, at least in the future, avoid issues like that. That's why like politically speaking, like trying to get like, more access to education and like fair housing and gender equality, pay equality, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's all like a work in progress. And obviously the changes aren't immediate, but it is something that we all should try to work towards long term, whether that be like, donating or, helping out or volunteering, stuff like that.
Thank you, Tamor. That was better said than what I was saying. Well, then, on that note, on Tamor's lovely end note, Hope, that's you.
Oh, this was coming in without context. Tamor, what did you think the discussion question was in the beginning?
Oh, what did I think the question was about? I mean, I don't know. We kind of started off with like personal things, like, like what makes you centered, what makes you happy, and then we kind of just like moved on to like broader things. I feel like what are you grateful for? I mean, like, are you asking me like what I think the question was?
Yeah.
Honestly, I have no idea, but
don't worry, it was a trick question. We didn't have one. Woo!
Oh, okay. I
broke the rules. We were supposed to have one, but I didn't do it.
I was sweating over here. I was like, what's going on? What am I supposed to say here?
Well, that was it for this episode. Next episode, we'll be joined again by Tamor, and it'll again be me and Dylan. And yeah, see you all next week.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.